My guest today is the co-host of the Geezers of the Game podcast.
Welcome to DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show. Level up your RPG campaigns by filling yourself with stories and knowledge. Explore topics from archaeology to film history to writing to literature and much, much more. This is DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show.
Welcome to the show. My name is Matt, and I am your host. This is the podcast where we learn how to become better game masters and role players by filling ourselves with stories and knowledge. Hey guys, I have an awesome interview today, but first, I would greatly appreciate it if you checked out my books of random tables. You can find them on Amazon.com, on DriveThruRPG.com, and my own website, DiceGeeks.com. All you really need to do is go to Google and type in the Book of Random Tables, and you will find them. Okay, here's today's interview. My guest today is one of the co-hosts of the Geezers of the Game podcast, Ryan McHargue. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. It's my pleasure. When did you start throwing dice and pretending to be an elf or whatever?
Yes, the beginnings. So it's kind of silly. Back, I don't know, 87, 88, somewhere in there. Good friend of mine had come back from a camping trip, and he's like, Ryan. I'm like, what? He's like, I have a game for us to do. And I'm like, okay. So he introduced me to basically a homebrew, very simplistic. We wrote down a few attributes. I don't even remember what they were at this point. Probably just the four primary, I bet, and had no dice whatsoever. So we used a penny, which is what he had used camping because they had no dice. And we played a very first adventure that I'd ever did. And the funny thing is I'd heard about D&D, obviously, from E.T. and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I grew up in a religious home, and the whole idea of magic was kind of frowned on. So I didn't really pursue it. I didn't realize there was any other kind of role playing. And we just kind of exploded from that point. Another friend, the friend that actually introduced him, was introduced by his older brother. And lo and behold, he had books like Car Wars. I don't know if you've ever played that.
Yeah. that consumed like 3 years from like 13 to like 16 for me. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a great game. I mean, all that post-apocalyptic stuff was just awesome. We did that for a while, and then discovered BattleTech, and that became our mainstay. Me, my co-host Nathan, and a good friend of ours, or a couple other good friends of ours, and they were both a little bit older, not really older. Actually, one of them was our age, but he was ahead of us in school, and they had jobs, and we didn't. Could drive, and we couldn't still.
Yeah.
And so they bought all these books and stole books from the brother, and we played Floor 7, and we played on just about everything. I mean, for probably 2 years straight, we've just played weekly almost that game, and that was the greatest thing ever.
Nice.
And then just kind of rolled down, discovered West End Games. I found it at I think a bookstore. I saw it there, and I'm like, oh wow, I'd never seen this. And it was the second edition, which led us to, well, what's the first edition?
The West End Star Wars game, right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. West End Games, Star Wars. Yes. The D6, the god of all games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And played Star Wars for quite a while. It was lots, it really just kind of snowballed it. I think it's like, when you get that, what do they call it? When they give a taste for free to the drug user, and then he's hooked. Like that. I guess I could have used a little less of a horrible analogy.
Yeah. You could have said like the nice lady at the grocery store who gives you a little bit of jelly or something.
The Costco booths with
who gives you like some sausage and cheese, and then you have to buy the whole pack instead of heroin or something.
Yeah, but it's way more like a drug.
I mean, I almost agree. It is like kind of like a drug. You can certainly treat it that way. But, one of the weird things is just like I was playing back in the day. I was like BattleTech. I've never played BattleTech, but I would kind of longingly look at the books like in the hobby shop and stuff and be like, oh man, this would be so cool to play BattleTech. So I've never actually played it, but it looked awesome. I loved the artwork and all of that. I mean, there were just too many games. Like I just wanted to play them all when I was, I was just going to say I wanted to play them all when I was a kid. I still want to play them all.
I know. I still have trouble if I go to like Drive-Thru RPG or something like that. It's not the same as being at a bookstore and seeing the games.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's that longing to just buy it. You may never ever play that game, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
How do you not buy?
No, I know. No kidding. I mean, I have drawers and shelves now full of games that I'm probably not going to play, but they're amazing. They're amazing.
Sure.
Yeah.
We use them. I mean, I use them. I've got challenge magazines that are sitting around that are 30 years old and or more. I can't even remember how old some of them are, but you just go through it and Space 1889 scenarios are in there and you're like, oh, I can get that guy out of there, or oh, that's a really good idea. I don't like to run pre-ran scenarios because I'm not good at it. I don't like to read like 100,000 pages.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff I glean from other books. We're constantly working on home brews anyways.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much exactly the way I am as well. I love making up my own stuff, but sometimes you just need ideas or you need just little things that can spark it, right? Like you can look at a picture in one of the BattleTech books and you just get an idea right from the artwork, or you like you said, you look at an old magazine or an old Dragon magazine from back in the day and you're just like, oh my gosh, that's a great campaign idea, and you can kind of run with stuff out of there. So I definitely feel you on that part. Now, you said you were playing. Did you start running games pretty soon, or did you stay a player for a while?
No, we all wanted to play, and we all wanted to game master or DM, whatever you want to call it. So we rotated, and we've done that ever since.
Wow.
Me and Nathan, obviously were the first two of my group to play together, and then met Mark, and I'd known Alex a little bit in high school as well. But he joined in us playing as the group later. But Mark had an Ultimate Powers book for Marvel, TSR Marvel. And we were doing some of that.
Yeah, and these are some of your co-hosts on your podcast, right?
Yeah, all my co-hosts, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, between Nathan and I have been role-playing for over 30 years together. Alex has probably been 25 years, and same basic thing for Mark. Mark has been role-playing longer than all of us. He started D&D, as he says, when there was only 4 character classes as a little kid. Yeah. But, I forgot what you asked, but yeah.
No, yeah, and then I was asking about game mastering. You said then he had Marvel superheroes that was put out by TSR, which I played and loved as well.
Yeah, I love that. Love that game. But we would change games frequently because we'd find a new game and be like, oh my, why aren't we playing this game? We change all the time. But we would always rotate. Between sometimes the same night, sometimes we would rotate, over, sessions, like, oh, as soon as your adventure's done, I'll pick up my adventure, or we would just try to end an adventure within like episodic almost. So for 30 years, I've game mastered and played. Nice.
I know some people get, kind of burnt out from being kind of forever GM. Some people love it. I know I went through several phases where to get people to play, basically, I had to offer to be the game master or the dungeon master just to even get a group to play. And sometimes I'm cool with it, back in the day, but then it got old a few times. So when we kind of, when some of my friends and I kind of kicked off again, playing more seriously in the early 2000s, I was just like, hey, guys, why don't we have other people GM as well? And we started rotating and doing some different creative things like that, either, starting on a morning session and then switching GMs or something like that. And we were having, to me, it really increased my enjoyment of the game because, being the game master and, just really dealing with kind of, so many decisions like all the time, it got kind of overwhelming for me. And of course, back then I was still prepping a lot, which I don't do anymore. And so I'm more free to run games nowadays because I don't prep anymore.
Yeah, I imagine the charts help a lot with that.
Yeah,
myself a little bit as of late. I sadly didn't know who you were until I came across your podcast. I'm like, this is exactly what I want. I was sharing it with the group, and I'm like, this is it. This is what our podcast is. This is what our aim is to talk like this kind of stuff. And they're like, oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I have some of his books. He's great. Like, oh.
Yeah, that was interesting that one of your co-hosts had already picked up some of my books. That was cool.
Yeah, he knew who you were and was very excited. He wants us to play your I forgot what it's called now.
The King's Road.
The King's Road, yeah. I kept wanting to say Knight's Road, and I knew that wasn't it.
Yeah, it's the King's Road. It's a campaign setting for really any fantasy, but I've been running it as a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. But it would work for Pathfinder or any others. I wrote it up kind of system agnostic, so people can, no matter what, or 13th Age, no matter what fantasy RPG you're playing. And so that was really cool to learn that. I'm always honored when I hear people have picked up some of my books. And it's always interesting to hear where they find my books in that. So that was a ton of fun to learn that your co-host had picked it up. But yeah, and so for having kind of played and GM'd for 30 years. I'm sure you've picked up a few things along the way. Why don't we talk about what are some of the lessons that you kind of learned from running a game? What were some of the things we usually talk about in positive terms, but maybe is there something you learned that you shouldn't be doing while you're running a game?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, one of the hardest lessons, and I think we all had to learn it. And I think people, when they are running a game, tend to do this at the very beginning of their gaming. But as we were playing in the same game setting, the exact same characters, mm-hmm. we all had a character. Mm-hmm. And learning to not favor your character is an important lesson. Because when you're game mastering, or control over that, and you can use your character, and we stopped doing that. Our characters are out when we're there. Mm-hmm. They're in the bathroom the whole time or whatever. But yeah, favoring your character when you're game mastering is a bad idea. And to lead fights.
Yeah. Yeah. And I ran across that because obviously, yes, when I was, a teenager or even in my early 20s when I was playing, a lot of times it was just, me and one friend, right? Only one person could come over or something at a given time and we'd role play. And so I like to run, kind of one-on-one sessions with a GMPC because it gives that person somebody to play off of. And but you do have to be careful in that regard. And I know what you're talking about, as well as if you start switching, game masters, and you're like, well, everybody has a character and we're all right here. And, oh, but my character could do this. And there is a bit of a temptation for that. But we solve that as well by having kind of different settings or different places, or, the character is not there, or another way, we had solved it as if we switched, we were just in like, my character, wasn't in the session that I was GMing with other people's characters. And then we switched to somebody else, and we, everybody in the group might be playing even a different character at that point, just so, the game master didn't have his or her character there so they could favor.
One of my favorite examples of a good way to do it. Have you ever seen Darkness Rising?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't tell you then, but I didn't make it. I have nothing involved in it. I get no kickbacks, but you need to watch it. Okay. If you are a D&D fan, you will find much humor and fun in it. But it's a group of film students, I believe, that came together and created a movie. It's a full feature-length movie. They did it all on their own. I don't remember if they had backing at all, but it's about a group of role players and their interpersonal issues, but specifically how it affects the game. And the game, they play their characters through the game too, and they go back and forth from the table to a movie version of their game. It's really well done, but the game master throws in a babysitter towards the end of the game, or towards a beginning of end of the movie, anyways. And the way he plays the babysitter is about as good as you're going to get with playing your character in a game. I recommend everybody. I don't want to give it away because it's got some twists and such. And if you've not seen it, you should see it.
Okay,
You'll like it.
Yeah, I'll try.
You should do a live stream and watch it.
Yeah, I'll try to check it out. So Darkness Rising. Yeah,
you can get it. You can watch it for free on YouTube. They have it up there.
Oh, okay.
It's done by Dead Gentlemen's, I think it's called, is their company.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right.
But yeah, it's just about using your character to benefit the party, but never get in the way of the party, except for when you need to help nudge them along or push them, to keep the theme going, basically.
Yeah. So is there anything else you've learned not to do?
So many things. I'm not a great game master. I never have been. I'm a decent storyteller. I can write pretty well. My grammar's horrible, so that's my biggest shortfall. But when it comes to game mastering, I really struggle with getting an idea in my head and kind of railroading it. And I know better, and so I try not to. And even when I'm saying, okay, they can do anything they want, and I introduce elements, they're like, oh yeah, we're being railroaded. That's okay, but we're being railroaded. I'm like, no, you can do what you want. You don't have to do this.
Yeah. I think too, though, it takes players a little bit to get used to kind of the sandbox idea. I don't know exactly, some people just take to it really quickly. And they're very active and they're just making decisions and going. But some people are like looking for clues from the game master or the dungeon master. And I don't know, exactly why that is. If they just, if they're just new to the game or they haven't played a lot, or if that's their, or if they're thinking it's a video game where they're going to follow kind of some path like you do in a, for all the bells and whistles of, say, like a Call of Duty game or something like that, you just follow a path, right? Like you just, there are places you can't go and there are things you can't do. And so I think some players look for clues from the game master, but I always love it when my players are really active and are just coming up with, things, off the top of their head. And I really enjoy that.
Yeah, me too. I think I tend to enjoy the game much better when they're having fun, because then I'm having fun.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about the story. It never comes out like you want it to. It's just not possible. So I don't plan much.
Yeah.
I used to try to plan out everything, in a act 1, act 2, and act 3 type setup, but it never works. So I stopped doing that. I usually come up with places and people now. And if they hit those places and people, great. If not, well, we'll be making up new places and people.
Yeah. I know when I was younger, I definitely wanted my party to do my story. I wanted them to enjoy my story, that I created this story and it's a lot of fun. And I'm like, you're going to enjoy this. And that was obviously the wrong take there. And it took me a while to realize that. And then I kind of went the exact opposite. Actually, I talk about this in my book, The No Prep Game Master, quite a bit. I then swung to the opposite side, to where I said, okay, sandbox, but I'm going to prepare for every contingency within a sandbox. And guess what? Do you know what, Ryan? You can't do that.
No, you can't.
Yeah, because
you can prepare for what choices you want to make, or you think you would make.
Yeah,
they don't make those choices.
Yeah, or if I just put in a whole bunch of random stuff, well, if I'm doing like a space game and I'm like, all right, I'm going to create like 50 planets or something.
God.
Well, actually, one time, the real story is that I created 12 solar systems, so it had way more than 50 planets. I created the whole thing, Ryan. I created gas giants with like 78 moons.
I know somebody who does that.
And you know how many planets, not systems. Do you know how many planets they went to? They went to 2 planets.
They went to 2?
They went to 2, not systems. I had 12 systems.
Oh, they stayed in the same system.
They went to 2 planets. They went to 2 planets. I had 12 systems.
Oh, God.
And so I learned that, and of course, it's like I think of, the planet with dinosaurs and the planet with this. And then they think of, something just totally different. Right. Because then now I say, you can do whatever you want. You're in a ship. You're here. There are places. Go. What do you want to do? And then, so they come up with stuff that I can't imagine, because they're different people and they're thinking about different things. And so that's when I really decided that I just don't prep anymore. I give out some hooks. I think about things. I think about things when I'm reading books or when I'm watching TV shows or movies, and I just throw things at them and see what happens, because, I don't know what the story is. So I'm engaged, they're engaged, and we're having a lot of fun at the table.
That's very interesting. Now, I have a question. So you create planets. Yeah. Are you the Star Trek planet creator, where it's all one type of planet? There's not any variety to it?
That is a very interesting question. Usually... it was for a Star Wars game, but usually for a Star Wars game, I know the old West End writer's guide, because in like 1994, I wrote off and got the writer's guide from West End Games.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did, and I found it a few months ago in some boxes that I hadn't looked in years. I found it and I scanned it, and I'm going to release it as a blog post here.
That's awesome.
Or did I?
You know who wants that?
What?
You know who wants that? What's his name? John. I can't ever say his last name right. The guy that's doing the Bad Batch and all of that. all those Star Wars things.
Uh-huh.
I guess he used West End Games source material for the writers. He said, "This is gospel. This is canon."
Oh, okay. Dave Filoni?
Yeah, Filoni. That's his name. Why couldn't I ever think of his name?
Yeah, probably because you're thinking of John somebody.
Yeah, that is the right name. I don't know where I got John.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I know I interviewed.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. And I know I interviewed Bill Slavacek, who wrote the source book for the West End Star Wars system, the one that came out in '87. And they took Twi'lek and they took Ithorian. So they took a lot of those, like Lucasfilm took those, and they became Star Wars canon out of his book that he made up, which is an amazing story in its own right. But usually for Star Wars, like I was saying, like, in their actual guide, it said, hey, don't do that. Don't make one climate planets. But I think that was part of the Star Wars universe, personally. So, like, you know, you have Tatooine, all desert. You have Dagobah, all swamp. And I know people will argue that, but that's getting pretty nerdy, although we get pretty nerdy on this podcast sometimes. But, like, you know, for Star Wars, I usually paint in those brushes because to me it fits that world. So, like, I made up a world and I said, hey, you know, except for a little bit around the equator, it's basically like Alaska, right? Like, there's tons of natural resources. It's ice, but not like frozen solid ice. It's, you know, it's kind of like that. And then I would say, okay, yeah, this one is a complete water world, and you know, there's only a few islands here or there. And I would paint with those kind of brushes on my planets because, like I said, I think that fits Star Wars better. Star Trek, I played a lot of Star Trek too. Star Trek, I would actually give, you know, more climates. You know, if the planet was like class M, according to Star Trek, getting geeky here, then basically I just called it Earth, unless, you know, it's just like basically you have all Earth ranges, unless I was really trying to do something like, you know, if it was on the edge, or, you know, of class M, if it was like, you know, one of the different classes, I'd say, okay, well, it's super arid and the atmosphere,
like Vulcan or something. Right?
Yeah, like Vulcan, or you know, you just say, hey, you know,
is
or
it Romulus like that too? I think.
I don't think so. I don't.
It's like a single climate, though. I think.
Yeah, it might be. I can't remember Romulus.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I know. We're down the Star Trek rabbit hole, which is usually where I live.
Hey, I'm all about it. My favorite source book is by far the Orion's books, the 3. I love those books.
Okay, from like the FASA ones.
For the FASA, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. You're going way back. I have all those books, and I still occasionally will still play. I'll beg my group, and we'll play FASA Star Trek because I love it.
And the horrible percentile rolls.
I like the percentile rolls. You know, I know
you do,
but
they really don't work.
Well, the thing is that, you know, I know for some things it seems a little weird, but that's why, like, I know we're really in the weeds on this one, but like the idea for somebody who's listening, right? Like, say, you know, you have an 11 skill rating and you roll a percentile dice. Well, obviously you have a pretty large percentage of chance of failing. But, you know, there are some rules for that, right? Like if it's a non-stressful situation and you have a 10 or higher, you don't have to roll, you know, some different things like that. So there's some different things you can do there. I think, though, for me, you know, and maybe when you're rolling biology or something, you know, you can get a little fiddly about it. You're like, hey, look, I'm a doctor, but I only have a 46 in, you know, in biology. I'm going to fail, you know, 50% of the time or whatever. But for combat, I actually really like percentiles,
action points as well.
Yeah. Oh, the action point system. Yes. Yeah,
it's really the best.
Yeah,
I love it. That's my favorite part about the whole system.
Yeah, and if people want to see that in video games, what was it? It was like the old Fallout video games had action points, and I can't remember if Fallout 3 did or
another one that played. Which was?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
never mind. I was thinking something else. Anyways, go ahead.
yeah. So like a punch, for context for listeners, so like a punch would be 2 action points, a kick would be 3, or the game master would just be like, oh, so you want to kick, punch, and do a backflip, while doing that? Okay, well, that's going to cost you 10 or whatever. And so the action points work really well. But like for combat, for me, like I think, like if you have a character now, of course, you're averaging together your dexterity and your skill points. So like you shouldn't always just be rolling, if you have an 11 unarmed combat, you're not just going to roll, an 11. You're going to average that with your dexterity. So hopefully your dexterity is high, and you'll get a percentage roll there. But like I like even kind of like 20% or 30%, like, hit chance in combat, because to me, it feels real, because you're like,
because you're rushing around trying to do something. Yeah,
exactly. So you're like, miss, hit. And then like you kill the person almost, right?
Or hard. Yeah. That's the other thing. It's more, well, you're dealing with a phaser.
Yeah. And I know I have some people in my group who are like, we don't play with phasers. Like, and I'm like, come on, man, you got to be disintegrated. Come on.
Right. Well, then don't put yourself in a dumb situation where you get shot.
That's exactly right. It's just like, this is Star Trek. You don't solve all your problems by shooting everybody, right?
Right.
Like you're going to solve your problems by talking to them, by doing negotiation, by doing some sciencey thing, by doing, thinking of some clever maneuver to bounce the, shuttlecraft off the atmosphere or whatever, whatever they do, or reversing the polarity on a tachyon beam. If you want to get into the later techno battle Star Trek.
Yeah. Or, just kirk it until it gets, to the point where it's smoke's coming out and it blows up.
Yeah. You can always do a logic, convince the machine to destroy itself, kind of thing, which is always fun, So yeah, so you can do all of those things. But yeah, I love FASA Star Trek. I could talk about FASA Star Trek all day because I love the thing. So how many games is that?
Favorite.
What is it?
That's one of Alex's favorites.
Oh, that's awesome.
The very first thing he ever played.
Nice.
Yeah, I had the deluxe set, and I went over there and we played, and dumb game, I'm sure, but anyways, we played, and he was like 14 or something at the time.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it when I was 11, and seriously, it took me a week to make my first character, and it was I totally cheated the whole way through.
Well, of course.
I was used to doing that on D&D as well. So, but anyway, actually, I found my, after I tell the story on the podcast a few times, after my father passed away in 2013, we were cleaning out the old house, and in a closet back somewhere tucked in with a whole bunch of magazines was the first D&D book that I had, and inside of them was all my characters from when I was
remember hearing this. Yes.
Yeah, from when I was like 9 to like 13.
How many 18s you had? Yes.
Oh gosh, they were 5 18s and a 16. That was like my standard go-to, because 6 18s that'd look like you were cheating, right?
Right. You got to have one low roll.
Yeah.
And it's always in the stat that you don't care about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then usually I was putting it on something because I didn't understand it, the rules. I'd put it on Constitution or something because I didn't understand the rules, because I was just making up stuff.
You can't do anything.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
You're not smart enough to open the door. Oh.
Yeah, I would do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I love FASA Star Trek and that. And I remember getting the Klingon supplement, and I almost lost my mind because I had to special order it from the hobby shop. And that was like the first time, because I saw the ad in one of my other books, and I had to like go up to, I'm like 12 years old, and I go up to the counter and I'm like, can I get this? How do I get this? And he's like, well, I can special order it for you. And I was like, yes, do it.
Take 7 months.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it did seem like it was a long time later that it came, but it was so cool, and I like lost my mind like reading.
Is that the black and red one?
Yep. The one was black and red, and then there was one that was black and blue, and one is like the officer's manual, and the other one's like the cultural kind of thing. Which
the cultural one, I remember that one, but the black and red one, the Klingons. I think it's what it said. Yeah, and it has I'm forgetting it. Well, it has like Star Trek 3, a lot of the imagery from Star Trek 3. It's almost all stolen from Star Trek 3, if I remember right, except for the drawings.
Yeah, except for the drawings. Those were all like original art and stuff. But like, yeah, it has the picture of Christopher Lloyd and John Larroquette, from Star Trek 3. And it's so cool. It is cool.
Are you a Star Trek 3 fan?
I love Star Trek 3, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, why wouldn't I love Star Trek 3?
I don't know. I'm not. I think it's probably one of the less. No, let me rephrase this. So this is how I look at it. The motion picture, the boring picture, if with amazing budget to it. Anyways, Star Trek 2. I mean, come on. Who can't love that movie? It stands up to time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
One of the deepest ones. Star Trek 3 is okay. Mm-hmm. Star Trek 4 is amazing. Mm-hmm. And Star Trek 5 is odd.
Yeah. That's kind.
Yeah, I try to be. Mm-hmm. Star Trek 6 feels like they're just throwing a pity shot.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't end on 5, so.
No, God, no. And I'm glad they didn't end on 5.
Yeah.
Star Trek 3 is not my least favorite, obviously, but
yeah. Well, okay. So here, for a little further context.
Okay.
literally, as in the actual meaning, literally, I am wearing a T-shirt right now that says "I weep for V'ger." This is my T-shirt. Oh my
gosh, V'ger, really?
Yeah,
that is awesome.
It says "I weep for V'ger." Now, I made
not a Star Trek 3.
Now I made the T-shirt, so and I had it printed up and mailed to me. So because I couldn't find one, so I had to do that. So I do like the motion picture as well. It is boring. I agree. It
has some great stuff in it. I'm not trying to poop on it.
Yeah.
It is got great stuff, but it's slow as all get out.
It is slow, and they don't even do anything until the last 5 minutes. Then when Kirk decides to do something, it's really fun. But sadly, it was 5 minutes. There was 5 minutes left.
It was all cinematography, all on shots of ships.
Yeah, gulping. People like staring and gulping.
Yes.
At V'ger, which is beautiful. The soundtrack is amazing. The special effects are great.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing. And actually how like it got made and things like that is just a really incredible story of how the movie got made with like, Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg, kind of famous names.
It's very reminiscent of the whole Firefly, getting a comeback from that, because it was a very much a fan push that helped get that movie made.
Yeah, and they were
Star Trek. Not, I mean, obviously Firefly too, but Star Trek. It's that same kind of thing.
Yeah, the motion picture. Yeah, they were trying like a TV show at the same time. They were trying to do some kind of revival, but apparently Michael Eisner just like made the call and was like, I love this script. We're going to make a movie. We're going to make it a feature film to kind of give Paramount something that would rival, Star Wars and some of the big, sci-fi movies that were coming out in the late 70s. And I'm glad he did, because it kicked off a whole new era. Right. And I agree with your assessment, but like, Star Trek 2, while say on like different than say Star Wars and New Hope or some of the maybe even like an Indiana Jones type thing, like it had a totally kind of different feel to it. It is
It had a very Spielberg feel.
Yeah, it is incredible from beginning to end. It felt, I don't know if I would say Spielberg. It had a bit of a smaller feel to it than say like Star Wars: A New Hope or Indiana Jones or something. It had a bit of a smaller, kind of almost like maybe a TV movie feel to it, but it's brilliant from beginning to end. It is just
because the special effects were very special.
Oh, the special effects in Star Trek 2 were again just knock it out of the park.
Although I think they're mostly stolen from. Was it the motion picture they stole a lot of the shots from? I think.
Not exactly. They did take some of the exterior of the ship, but then they created some new ones, and it was the first time the unit, the special effects unit for the Genesis device, the scene where it's like creating a planet, like in where Carol Marcus is like narrating this little video, that was created by a company, that would become Pixar, right? So that was the first time, I believe, that a completely computer generated image was shown on screen. That was the first time in a movie that was shown, and it was great. They had to invent, like, I don't even remember how many processes to make it look as good as it did, and it was phenomenal. And so the special effects were great. The ships, the score. I mean, James Horner. I mean, how
gosh, yes.
How can you get better than that?
Yeah. It's better than John Williams, to tell you the truth. And John Williams is amazing. Even though he borrows from other composers.
Well, I mean, John Williams, the Star Wars has it follows a tradition, but I mean, the original Star Wars was incredible as well. But it does follow a tradition from some of the serials back in the day.
Well, there's specifically, I think, 3 different composers that he took pieces out of their pieces and worked them in, and elaborated on them. It wasn't directly, but
and apparently
it's the same thing.
Yeah, and apparently that's fairly common, and
I think it's very common.
And the Jerry Goldsmith, the kind of the iconic Star Trek is the Horatio Hornblower with just several note changes, right at the beginning, that kind of when the trumpet kind of goes right at the beginning. That was from an old movie from the Horatio Hornblower series, which nobody even talks about anymore.
I don't think I've heard anybody bring that up in a long time.
Yeah. That's where that came from. But I mean, this is turning into like a Star Trek rant. But I still love Star Trek 3. I mean, while 2 is a hard act to follow because 2 was great.
Yes.
And then 4 was like, that was like the perfect send up of hilarity, right? It was just so funny. You're so in love with the characters by that point that you just feel like, you're just with it. Leonard Nimoy had really learned how to direct the movie and knocked it out of the park.
That was his first, right?
3 was his first.
Oh, that's right.
That was the condition. That was the condition to get him to come back, right?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, you got to take my nerd card.
All right, revoked, Ryan.
I know.
Revoked.
It's revoked.
Yeah.
Let me get it out of my wife's purse.
You didn't know that Leonard Nimoy's first film was Star
3.
Trek 3. Yeah. How do you know the film that actually he directed a movie that made him like financially independent? Do you know what movie that was?
I do not. What was it?
3 Men and a Baby.
He directed 3 Men and a Baby?
He did. He directed.
Obviously I've seen that. And most of our audience probably has not seen that.
I know. If you're younger than like 40, you probably haven't seen that one.
And I can't recommend it because it would be lame compared to today.
Yeah.
But it was a great movie.
Yeah, it was a huge hit. It was a huge hit in like 1987 or 1988. It was right after, I think, Star Trek 4, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I I could probably look it up, but I'm not gonna. But I could probably look it up.
Yeah, I think it was like
I don't
87
remember.
or something. But
It was, it was around there
yeah.
because I think it came out right after Look Who's Talking. Now I got to look all this up. See, this is what happened.
Well, now we're really on a rabbit hole now, but I probably shouldn't have brought that up. But I can
play it anymore.
Yeah,
Okay,
I know we're not
came
talking
out-
about role play. We're talking about movies. Although I talk about movies a lot since I studied screenwriting and I love movies.
So 3 Men and a Baby came out in 87, like you thought.
Okay.
And Look Who's Talking. 1990.
Oh, okay. So that was afterwards.
I had them backwards. They were backwards.
Yeah.
Oh well. Anyway.
That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, that movie, I think it made him just completely financially independent because he, it was such a huge hit that people just
it's huge.
Yeah, it was
Look
huge.
at the cast, those
Yeah.
Tom Selleck and
Ted Danson.
I can't remember that other guy's name.
Steve Guttenberg.
Yeah, Steve Guttenberg. That's it.
Yeah.
I should. How do I forget his name?
Yeah, he's in everything in the 80s, every movie in
yeah.
the 80s. Steve Guttenberg.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but yeah, we have gotten way off the beaten track on that.
So
oh my
sorry.
gosh, there's tons of other stuff. I love talking about movies. I don't know.
I do too. I love talking, I guess.
And we're running on in time. I've had you on here a long time. Well, I would be remiss. We talked about you being the host of a podcast or a co-host of a podcast. Why don't you tell us about your podcast, The Geezers of the Game? Now, Ryan, why would you call it that, man?
Yeah, that's a question I get quite a bit.
You're insinuating that I'm old because I think I'm actually old.
We are old.
Yeah.
I basically come down to the in comics you have the golden age and the silver age.
Yeah.
For those who don't know what that means, I'm sorry. Anyways, no, golden age is the original comics, like Timely Comics and Action Comics, and then the silver age is like around World War II. These are when Captain America came out and all the Avengers really kind of got their start, around that major time. Wonder Woman, things like that. Well, I mean, she was before that, but anyways, doesn't matter. So there's the two classes there. So when I was thinking about role playing, and I was thinking, people that started out with like Gygax, picked up his stuff and started playing with him, or played in that time period. They're kind of the golden age. They're the original role players in my mind. I'm sure there's role playing you can trace back to Pharaoh's time if you want, and I bet farther back, but really I consider them the golden age. That
like 74 to like 80 or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. And then the silver age was kind of that relaunch. A lot of games started coming out about mid 80s, like 85. I think there was a couple things in 83 as well, but those people that started there, and that's when I started, is in 87, 88. And with those books like Car Wars, things like that. So I was thinking, okay, well, we're not old, but we're old enough. And most of the podcasts I'd heard were these young guys that were probably millennials in their 30s or younger. And so, they're relatively new. They've been playing for less than 5-10 years. And I'm like, 30 years is a long time to be playing a game.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, we're kind of older. And, I wake up with aches and pains. I don't know about anybody else. So I came up with the Geezers of the Game, and I convinced my friends to help me to come on the show and be co-hosts. And, they come and go. Sometimes I have one. Sometimes I have all of them. Sometimes I have none of them. But, that's where the Geezers of the Game came from.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff do you like to talk about?
So we started out just for 30 years. We've spent more time talking about role playing than actually role playing. And I think that's true for any group that games together for any time period. Yeah. And so it's really just, this is what we do anyways. Why don't I just record it and put a little format to it? So that's what we do, is we just kind of talk. We try to keep it thematic, but you know how well that will work when you've got more than two people.
No, I have no idea, Ryan, since we were just talking about Three Men and a Baby and Star Trek on a role-playing game podcast. I have no idea.
Exactly what happened. We interview people. We had you on just recently. We have had Austin Janowski. He's a comic book artist and an actor. Great guy. Everybody should check out his work. I think he's great. We've had therapists on the show to talk about the catharticness of role playing. We've talked about feelings in role playing and how they can get in the way or help a game. We've talked about pretty much everything you can imagine. And we just started, so we're going to be down the rabbit hole real fast, which is fine with me. I enjoy it. The thing is it's really, role playing is not like any other hobby, because if you're talking about like sports, what do you usually talk about? Sports. Maybe you'll talk about who owned the team or who was on the team at this time, or maybe you'll get so far out into the weeds to talk about a reporter or somebody's wife or girlfriend or whatever. But role playing is synonymous with so many different things. Storytelling is the biggest part of role playing. And what else is storytelling in? Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about commercials and probably fit it into a role playing if we wanted to. And matter of fact, we have. Anyways, you'll have to listen to it, but we were talking about manipulating for feeling, trying to force a player to feel something. And we were talking, it's kind of like when you think about that Sarah McLachlan song and what is it? Double ACP or whatever it is. I can't remember. It's not double ACP. That's a completely different thing. It has nothing to do with animals. And I have a horrible time with letters. No, it's the animal one. What's the animal one?
PETA?
No, not PETA. It's the animal shelter thing.
Humane Society.
Yeah, but it's something else. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's unimportant. But you've also seen the commercial with her singing and I'm showing these diseased and horrible big-eyed animals.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. But yeah, it was a commercial like 15 years ago or something, right?
Yeah, I think they still do it, to tell you the truth.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, anyways, that you can learn a lot from commercials just the same as anything. They are trained to lead you, and a good game master can lead you.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me just say, there's no crying in role-playing games. To mix.
Did you look at my thing?
No, I did not. Did you do something about that?
No crying in role-playing.
Oh my gosh. I was just making that up. I was just going to mix a movie reference with
I know
role-playing
you are, and
funny.
I know exactly what movie reference you're talking about.
Yeah, I was just being funny. I had nothing behind it other than I was just trying to make a joke. But you did something on that?
Yeah, that's our feelings episode. There's no crying in role play. My wife and I go back and forth with that and use, Tom Hanks saying that, but in different things, it could be anything. There's no crying and cooking, or whatever. It doesn't matter what. Yeah. One cool thing that I have out right now on the website, which is geezersofthegame.com, under free resources, I put together I call it my Dr. Phil method of creating depth in characters. It's a real easy way to do it. I got the idea when I first saw Dr. Phil he talks about these things, and you can read it and you'll see what it says. But it's much easier than trying to just go through and answer 40 questionnaire to create your character's depth. This is stuff that you can directly use without handing, a novel to your game master and saying, here's my backstory.
Yeah, no, that sounds interesting. And I'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So anybody who's listening can check that out. That's interesting that you take kind of the like Dr. Phil and go, with, kind of take that approach with role-playing games. That's interesting. But your earlier point when you said that like everything is, kind of found in role-playing games, I couldn't agree more, because, you can, to tell a story, like you were saying, I mean, you can have poetry, you can have music, you can have, prose, you can have, spoken word, obviously drama. And I just think it's an incredible hobby that brings all these disciplines together.
One of the things I'm working on right now, writing up, is a book that's going to be specifically taking, I've done public speaking for, 30 years almost. Since I was young, I've been trained in public speaking, and I'm taking that knowledge and saying, okay, as a role player, whether you're the GM or a player, what do I use from that? What can you take from that? And there's a bunch of stuff. Just knowing how to write an outline can be super helpful. Yeah. Whether you're talking about writing up your character or, outlining a scene, understanding scene goals, things like that. How to get main points across, all of those things. It really comes down to everything fits into role play. Yeah. You can use pretty much anything. I don't know about burger flipping, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I mean, there might be, it might give you an insight into something that you could then do in a role-playing game, because
I have no idea what it would be, though.
No, I don't either, because it's like I haven't thought about it in that context before. But I think
now that I'm sorry.
Yeah, now I'm going to, and I'm going to think of something. But, because I think you're absolutely right. And of course, that's a goal of my show here, is that, if we can't, if we don't have time to, I wish, right, we could read every book there was and watch every movie and watch every TV show that there are, and to play every single role-playing game that gets made. I would love to have that much time. But, my idea behind the show is, of course, is to take what we can from, what we do and what we're interested in, what we are seeing, and take that and use that in our games, because, nothing should be wasted, because we can use that, in our games. If you're doing something for work, even, if you're using PowerPoint or Zoom for work, well, guess what? You can, that'll help you playing online. I mean, just it goes down to even like really technical or minutia kind of things, let alone storytelling and, campaign ideas.
Oh, definitely. I've used PowerPoint to do scrolls. Yeah. Scrolls for Star Wars. Star Wars games.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't play Star Wars without a scroll. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I've done similar things as well. I've used PowerPoint to get points across. Actually, the first thing that I did was Anarchy, which was a post-apocalyptic campaign setting for the OpenD6 system. In the book, I tell people to use Google Maps, because it's a near future game. So you just pull up Google Maps on a monitor, you roll random dice to see what state of the United States you're in. And you just pull up an area on the Google map, and it shows you layout, terrain, buildings, and you just add your details. Like you just say, oh, well, the roof on this building's collapsed, or this highway is clogged with, wrecked cars or whatever. And you just use that. You just use Google Maps to play. And the number of times that I did that for my playtest group and stuff, they loved it.
That's awesome. That's a good use of technology. I love that.
All right.
That's great.
Yeah. No, Ryan, I've had you on here like way too long, but I could keep going. I could keep talking.
I know.
But we, I need to split. You need to split. We should give our listeners here a break, because they probably don't want to hear about 3 Men and a Baby again, because that's probably where we're going to end up again if we keep talking.
They're going to go watch it.
Or they're going to go watch it. It's on Disney Plus, by the way. So if you
is it? I'll have to watch it. My daughter's not seen it, so.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, Ryan, just say your website again, and where can people find your resources and your podcast?
Sure. So my website is geezersofthegame.com. And our resources are up there. I've only got the one up so far, but I'm working on one for using themes. And then obviously I'm working on the bigger book right now. And then the podcast can be found anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, pretty much. And it's just called Geezers of the Game. And if you have trouble finding it, just go to the website. There's links.
All right. And like I mentioned a little earlier, I will be sure to put a link to the website and to the podcast in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So anybody who is listening right now, just hop over to Dice Geeks, find this podcast. You'll see the show notes, and I'll have the links to Ryan's podcast and his resources there. So Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. And we're definitely going to have to get together and talk about 3 Men and a Baby.
All right, there you have it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ryan today. I am sorry we kind of crossed into 3 Men and a Baby and some random Star Trek trivia. I did not expect on discussing the directorial career of Leonard Nimoy today, but sorry about that. But anyway, Ryan shared some great information about running games, about playing games, and about what he is up to with his co-hosts on his podcast, The Geezers of the Game. As I mentioned, in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com, you will find links to his podcast and his resources. Please check them out. Now, if you want some free stuff, head over to dicegeeks.com/free. You'll get 10 free dungeon maps. You'll never miss an episode of this show. And each and every Friday, you'll get an email update from me letting you know what is going on here at Dice Geeks. All right, guys, if you enjoy this show, please consider supporting it in some way. You can like, rate, subscribe, review wherever you are listening to this podcast. That would help the show out immensely. Also, if you want to support the show financially, you can do so at patreon.com/dicegeeks. I would greatly appreciate that as well. It takes a lot of effort to put this show together, and I greatly appreciate all my patrons. All right, now guys, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep gaming.